Thank you for being here. I guess I should speak a bit about the political situation before I tackle some of the issues that I have here on my agenda. Last week we witnessed a very important day for Guyana, a day that many people have been waiting for. And that was nomination day, in which several parties presented their list of candidates for the general and regional elections. We in the People's Progressive Party were very pleased that we managed to present a list of candidates who represent Guyana, the diversity of Guyana, people from every region, people with different skill sets, a lot of young people, a lot of young professionals, people with older folks too, because we don't discriminate in that regard, and people with a storehouse of experience that can form a government from day one that will start delivering on our manifesto promises. And so we're extremely pleased with that. I want to thank the hundreds of others who expressed a desire to be on our list, but we could not accommodate them. And there were lots of people across the country who expressed that desire. This is a time we are going into government as an opposition party. It's the first time since 1992. And so many people thought that when you come from the opposition, you'd have a paucity of candidates because people would be fearful of the incumbent, particularly given the vindictiveness, the demonstrated vindictiveness of this incumbent government. But I think Guyanese have crossed a threshold, and they just don't care about the vindictiveness anymore. They realize that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change this corrupt, incompetent cabal. If we fail at this task, our country will fail, and they realize that. Hundreds of young people, in fact, thousands of young people who have never seen that much on the campaign trail, now when we go across the country, you see them there everywhere. And people who never supported the PPP have come off the fence. Many of them were apolitical in the past, come off the fence and want to be part of the campaign. So I think that coming from the opposition and having so many candidates. On the other hand, if you contrast our list with that of the government, you see it's the same old, the Keith Scotts and everybody else. That group there, a few new people who were, many of them are just public service types who work closely with some ministers, so they're ministers' favorites, etc. And we saw quite a few members who are related to each other on their list. At least 10% of their list are made up of people who are related to each other. And so it's a moribund list. There are a few new people, but in whole, if I had to characterize it on the whole, it's a moribund list. It's a list that can't offer you anything new. It's just it's going to deliver the same low energy type of administration should they succeed, but we know they're not going to succeed. What was particularly worrisome on nomination day was the acts of thuggery led by prominent people in the PNC. People like Christopher Jones and many of the others who were urging their protesters, or the people when they're in their procession, not the protesters, but to block our procession from going to the Umanayana. And, you know, there is something called decency. They campaign on a slogan of decency. And the decent thing to do is, after you've submitted your list, is to go back peacefully from where you've come and allow other parties to present their list. But they sought to block us from going to Umanayana, and they were actively urged to do so by members of the leadership of that party. And nevertheless, we prevailed because they're not going to intimidate us. And in my head, and I hope that Guyanese are saying this, these are acts of desperation. You see it in the faces of the people when you pass them, who are in their procession. You have a vocal few who are the Perks crew, link up with some of these ministers, and then you have ordinary people. And they look at our procession, they see the diversity, they see the positiveness of our messages, and many of them are just silent. So it's the desperation of that lot that sees political power slipping away that would make their messages and their acts even a bit more hostile. We saw a manifestation of it in Makkah. Yesterday we had a meeting in Makkah. We had to cancel it because on the same day, and the police, rather than encouraging them to stop their activities, the police urged our people to cancel, because on the same day they took a vehicle and started announcing their meetings around and around very loud so people can't hear our messages. But we have a message from Makkah too. And the people who live in Makkah, we may not get a lot of votes in Makkah, but we want them to hear about our plans too, because their children are going to receive the $50,000 per year grant when it comes about. And they're going to have their free water returned to them too, whether they vote for us or not. We have messages. And we're going to, in spite of all of this attempt for us not to take our messages into these communities, we will persevere. We're very surprised that the observers are not around as yet, nor the ERC. We have not seen anything from the ERC as yet. This is not a low energy body, and I'm very upset to say this because they have a unique opportunity in these elections to stamp their credentials. But we have not seen any attempt to condemn the violent language and the several attempts to disrupt meetings we've had. In places like our rallies and stuff, they would come deliberately with a flag, 1 or 2 persons. And you know what? Those people leave our meetings unharmed. They leave our meetings unharmed. At Kitty, we saw leaders of the PNC. Eddie Collins was there. And he walked through the crowd, and nobody bothered him at the Kitty rally. Just imagine if a PBP leader had gone to their launch, what the behavior would have been. And then they're the ones to talk about decency. So we will persevere. None of these acts of intimidation will deter us from our campaign and from going to communities. Tearing down flags, billboards, and stuff like that, not gonna work. We'll put up more flags, and we'll put up more billboards, and we will ensure people get the message, and our message is all one about Guyana. We had a successful engagement also in Region 1 And you know, the neglect we saw there, the people, they have this impression that you can fly in with vehicles at the last moment, 5 plane loads, and carry in some stuff and people would vote for you. But I sat there talking to people, you know, the old woman who came out of the river, or someone else, and people's lives have deteriorated massively. And one woman said to me, you know, it's so disgusting. That's exactly what she said. It's disgusting that they will put up these banners here, a good life with Granger's faces, a good life only for him, because we know how things have deteriorated in the villages here in the hinterland. And so it's really an affront, disdain for Guyanese of every race and of every political persuasion to come back with a slogan like a good life for all. Having seen the reality of what took place in Guyana, how many people lost jobs and welfare. And then to come back with that slogan, it's almost like rubbing it in your face. The same thing they did with this fit and proper slogan that they campaigned on. That was illegal. They celebrated the illegality of their actions with appointment of Justice Patterson. And so this is another issue. We expected the Chronicle and the others, because they were shocked because Albion had a massive rally. And if you look at our messages, they're all positive. What are we going to do for Guyana? And our platform is about all the people of Guyana, everybody. And so our messages were positive, but again, distortion in the state media. And also, I saw Chronicle saying that we retreated from our promise to reopen the sugar estates at Albion. I don't know where they got that from, but that was Chronicle's headline. So they seem to, their only campaign now is about the PPP, and I will talk a bit about that. And they've gone back to this, the old rhetoric. Oh, the PPP is corrupt, we have to lock them up and throw them the keys away. I saw Valda Lawrence with this pathetic thing. The fact is that Valda and the others are accustomed to threatening violence. They threaten violence even on their own members. You've heard her tape. So it's nothing new, and the likes of Valda Lawrence would never intimidate me. And I would not even report her, but just I hope that the international community is seeing the type of language you're using at the meetings. But if anyone has to go to jail, just think about it. It has to be like Valda Lawrence, because in her ministry, we had the infamous drug bond contract that has to be negotiated, the $605 million contract that the public procurement said was illegal, her hiding the information about the guy from, what's his name, from New York, one of the Singhs, the many Singhs that they have, Hardat Singh. Recall when the audit report pointed out how we got hundreds of millions of contracts, which could run into billions, because that was only for a defined period. And we asked questions in Parliament. She refused to answer the questions and sought the protection of the Speaker to run it past the recess. We never got answers for those questions yet. So if anybody has to go to jail and you have a proper investigation, it would be Valda Lawrence. But we're not threatening Valda Lawrence with jail. We're just saying we'll investigate it. And therefore, that's how we'd approach it. And they've gone back to this old rhetoric. Imagine nothing. They can't talk about their record. Even I see them putting up scrolls about the PPP. Right? We put up messages scrolls. Now there are scrolls about the PPP. PPP lying, PPP this, PPP that. We put up scrolls, you're going to get 50,000 house lots, low-income house lots, and we can do that. We've done it before. That's what we're talking about. You're going to get back your free water, you know, or we're going to reverse all these taxes, and there are hundreds of taxes and fees increases. And people can point to that. We said what we'll do for the miners, people in the forestry sector, etc. That's what our scrolls are about. Their scrolls now, they just started putting up some, oh, the PPP is this, the PPP is that. And that's their entire campaign. Their entire campaign going back to communities and blowing the racism whistle about, oh, your children are not being killed. And about because they refer to the period with the trouble period. And you know that has been exposed so many times, the 400 persons, the list they produce, that they will keep at the rhetoric because that's the only thing they want to do to polarize the communities. But let me say to a lot of those kids and communities they're talking about, that should we have a proper investigation? And why do you think Granger avoided a COI on that, after, in spite of all the killings about phantom squads and everything else? Why do you think he did not have a COI on that? And he had about, I don't know, 20 other commissions of inquiry. It's because there's key leaders of the People's National Congress and the AFC that will be complicit in the killings of many people through their link to the criminal cabal that took over that community. Direct links, through supply of weapons and a whole range of things. And that's the reign of terror that led to the death of 25 policemen when they went out to hunt policemen. So people should understand that period. That's why people were being killed and portraying them like freedom fighters. I recall when they draped Blackie's flag on the square of the Revolution. They draped his coffin with the national flag. That guy had just had a shootout with our armed forces and shot a soldier who, in his eye, until now, he has issues because it damaged a nerve. The sympathy should have been with our security forces, not the criminal who was shooting at them. But that is it. And just more recently, the Abdul Qadir matter. So it's not going to work. You can't feed people that the PPP is bad when you're not looking out for jobs or anything like that. You have no plan to improve their lives. Oh, the PPP is bad. So that's their entire campaign there. But I just wanted, nevertheless, to say that we're going to continue with our positive messages. We're going to keep working to ensure that when we emerge from these elections, that the PPP is victorious, but the atmosphere is not poisoned, so we can move our country forward swiftly for all of our people. Because there are lots to be done, lots of things to be fixed, starting from day one. Power, you know, getting back money in people's pockets, getting some of our kids employed around the country, reopening the estates so that people can go back to work and feed their families, that sort of thing. So the next thing I wanted to talk a bit about is GCOM. So we have seen this court case, and it represents another act of desperation. As they argue that they want elections and they're ready for elections, there is a significant group within the PNC that has been saying to people, we're going to lose the elections. They're calling people. They know they were going to lose the elections. So they talk to their friends, etc. So they tried earlier to tamper with the voters list through the house exercise. But that did not succeed because it was stopped short based on a ruling from the Chief Justice. I think they were pinning a lot of their hopes on that. And so they recognize now that with the international presence in there and with enhanced vigilance on the part of the commissioners, the international community, and us bringing these matters to the media, at media's attention and the Guyanese public on a weekly basis, that the room to tamper with the list is narrowing. Not that they will not attempt to do so. So that is why we were very surprised, and I've since brought this to the attention of the consultants who came in. One arrived there from the Commonwealth, and I had a meeting with them, and I pointed out that nobody within GCOM should really be making large-scale changes to the RVL now that the statutory processes are over. But that is precisely what's happening in there. And therefore, if we can't stop these changes, they're saying they're updating the addresses using house-to-house unverified data, that all the political parties must get a list of the changes made so we can verify what those changes are when the OLE comes out. And we'll check the OLE again. So we're going to insist that we get what those changes are and then cross-match them. So that is, and could have been an attempt to change people's name, place them in wrong divisions, etc. And they would not have an opportunity to check again and therefore create confusion on elections day, or disenfranchise them by saying your ID card has changed or your address has changed and you can't vote. So we are very vigilant about that. But, so they're not succeeding a lot there in trying to create confusion around the list. So they have returned back to the court case through the appeal. And we believe this is one of the things they're trying to do here is to stop the elections. By this argument that the voters list, that there's a residency requirement to vote. That's what they're arguing, that you have to be resident. There is the only requirements to be on the list and to vote are enshrined in the Constitution of Guyana. Constitution. That's the primary law. Any other law that conflicts with the primary law will fail. In fact, it would be inconsistent. It has to be amended. Nothing can conflict with your constitutional rights. We removed the residency requirement from the Constitution. It was there before, and it was removed. So the Constitution says Guyanese 18 years and above to be registered and to vote. And it says you can only be removed from the voters list, and it gives reasons why. If you become insane, certifiably insane, etc., that's when you can be removed. Nothing else can conflict. They're confusing the abolition of overseas voting with the requirement that you have to have a residency in Guyana to vote. Overseas voting used to take place where APNU used to create a list and people used to vote in New York, etc. They go into the embassy there and vote. Yeah. Now that has changed. It's been abolished. So if you're on the list, now you have to come back and you're abroad. You have to come back to Guyana and vote in the division in which you're registered. That is what the Chief Justice ruled. So it's not overseas voting. You have to vote here. But your registration is preserved based on our Constitution. So that's the gist of the matter. And all that they're trying to do is to throw them off the list. They want to throw people off the list. And we could very well, but what is even more unusual is that the courts should have sought from the commission whether Roysdale Ford and Mr. Marcus, who purport to represent the commission, whether they are properly authorized by the commission to represent them. Because this matter was never discussed at the Elections Commission. But GCOM has a case, and they have lawyers now arguing their case, supporting the Attorney General. GCOM should not be a party to this exercise. It's an independent constitutional body. The Attorney General can argue because he comes from the PNC. And if he wants to hire his lawyers, he can argue that. But here is it, that GCOM is part of the case, and you have two lawyers representing GCOM that don't have the authority of the commission, because the matter was never discussed at the commission, to represent them. And guess who the two lawyers are? One is Marcus, and the other one is Roysdale Ford, who is on the list of APNU, the top-up list. So how can GCOM claim impartiality and then it is arguing against itself without the authority of the commission? The commissioners have not even discussed this matter. So they are, I suspect, they are in Basil's team, but having the cover of GCOM, and that should be ended immediately. GCOM, the chair of GCOM should intervene immediately and say, this matter, you don't have the imprimatur of this commission. You can't go to court and argue that you're representing us. It's like imposters in court. And that, because they're arguing really to slow down the elections or stop the elections. So this matter we're going to be pursuing aggressively. The next issue is that, we have been arguing for a while, and should the PPP get back in office, when there is a more than great chance of that happening, we intend to tackle seriously laws on fraud surrounding the electoral process, to pass tough legislation. We cannot allow con men and con artists to dupe people into supporting their list or becoming candidates on their list when those people are unsuspecting and they don't even support them. It's a fraud on not only on those people, it's a fraud against the whole country. It means that they get on the ballot. We pay for them to get on a ballot when they should not really be on that ballot because they don't have the minimum requirements to get there. And so we have discovered that we got a response from GCOM after we submitted 10 lists for the 10 regions, our geographic list, and our national top-up list. Everything was good with our list, no errors, and there are literally over 600 candidates with thousands of backers and stuff. So we got a letter from GCOM saying that there was one person, Mr. Elroy Thomas of Barabina in Region 1, whose name was already on that of another party, and therefore we had to replace him. That was the only issue we had with all of our list. And so I want to thank the people who work on our list too, because it's lots of work, huge packages and stuff, and that was the only thing. That his name was on another person's list. So we decided we will replace that name because we have thousands of supporters in Region 1. But Mr. Thomas contacted us and said, I never agreed to be the candidate or backer for any other party. I support the People's Progressive Party. I've always supported the party. He came to Georgetown to see me. And he did an interview. And, but we couldn't take chances. We had to replace his name because we didn't want our list to be defective. But when I heard this story, he said to me, there are individuals going around, one person, and said, I need about 50 names here. We're going to check whether you're on the voters list. So we traced this to the individual, and the individual then said he was collecting it for the Carter Center. So entire list of candidates and backers could be fraudulently before GCOM, and the problem is that you or I, any one of us here could become a backer, and we would not even know because it would not be made public. And because somebody forged our signature or told us something else, that you're signing for your pension, like what they did in WIM, Nagamutu and Apnu and all of them did in WIM and Crabwood Creek the last elections, and then you become a support and a backer for a political party. And this is, if you're aspiring to the highest office in the land and you start with this fraudulent behavior, what can we expect of these individuals? It's pure fraud. And a lot of people, you see, they would not even know that they were there on the list because they would never see their names. That's the problem. So there should be a requirement in the future that the list of maybe all the candidates and backers be published for a few days before, so people can go and say, I did not support this party. I did not sign any backers form. That was forged. And then take strong police action, criminal action against those individuals. It's utterly disgusting, utterly disgusting. And you know, because I'm getting more involved in electoral processes now because of being general secretary of the party, now I'm seeing the extent of the deceit. As president, I didn't realize that it was so, you know, you had so many unconscionable people doing this for, against people's will. And so we will pursue this to the end because it's very unfair that this is happening. I see a couple of the smaller parties saying, oh, Jagdeo talked to them. I think some of them are just, they mention the PPP's name. We talk to everybody generically. I generally speak with anyone who comes in here. But we've never really sought to say, come to join us and we will share something with you. We don't work that way. And we have a lot of candidates. But we always have a good face to all the parties. Our argument has been that this is a free country. Everybody could form their party if they want to and contest. But if you distort our record, we'll come after you. So I've seen some distortion from Schumann, some very low level, like very nasty things, post and stuff. I wouldn't say it's beneath him, because I think it fits right with him. I wouldn't say it's beneath him, but I think it's a sign of desperation. And, you know, he was negotiating with APNU for positions too. Lots of positions, and it failed. We never did that. You know, he was negotiating with APNU, and that people who were with him left because of that. From Moruca and all the other places who thought that he had the interests of indigenous communities at heart. So he has been one who misrepresented. And then this, some Vishnu Gandu. So he said that that PPP is negotiating with, or asked him and stuff like that too. Again, these people, you can't gain relevance by quoting big parties. You have to gain relevance by working, and first of all, by honestly signing statutory forms. Honestly signing statutory forms. So I'm looking to see how those issues develop a bit further. So I've seen that, and if they persist, we're going to change a little bit my strategy, and then I'll talk about some of them and the things that we know. But we know right now we're keeping focus on our messages. We're not being distracted by the APNU's negative campaign or theirs. Now, for the past few weeks, as we get closer to the elections too, we've seen some people becoming more political. I think that Godfrey Stacia is one of those. I think he's worried that the cesspool of the GRA that he has created, not the staff there, because you have a lot of hard-working staff, but the little inner circles and the many decisions that were made there, partisan decisions that were made there that led to the leakage of billions of dollars, that those would be exposed once the government changes. So I've seen him, and obviously he's getting directions from Jordan too. So I've seen him in issuing 3 statements in just a short period. So Jordan is holier than thou too, you know, Mr. Clay. So first of all, he questioned the leak of the audit report. Now, the audit report for a country, any country, is by no means a secret document. The mere fact that it's an audit report for the country means that every single resident should have a copy of it, or it should be posted online. It's not Jordan's money. It's not Statia's money. It's not their assets to be disposed of. It's the people's asset. They have a right to know. So we have this anomaly where the report goes to the speaker and then is disseminated. So this report was sent to the speaker since September of 2019. And it's supposed to be shared with the members of Parliament. Parliament is not meeting, but our right to receive the report should not be curtailed. They could easily send it out. So the report was at Parliament since September 2019. Now in January 2020, the report made the media, and it's considered a leak. It was officially submitted to the National Assembly. It should have been in the public domain. But do you know why people like Jaipal Sharma or Sticky Finger Patterson or Stacia are so concerned about the audit report? Is because of the exposure of their sectors. So now it has to be the Auditor General's problem. He is the problem in Guyana, not the thievery that they perpetrated on the people, but his problem is the thievery. He did a report and he released the report. That's his statutory duty. And so, listen to what Stacia says. At the time when there were initial leakages of the draft report in July, August 2019, I was prepared to give the Auditor General the benefit of doubt for its leakage, since the GRA, like other government departments, are like sieves, and the press only reported on the GRA. However, in this instance, I've noted extensive coverage of all departments, so by deduction, this leakage may lie squarely and exclusively on his shoulders. So he's blaming the Auditor General because the whole report is out. But the whole report was out since September, tabled in the Parliament. Now this Stacia, contrast this with Stacia firing people because the country knew somebody, he said, disclosed information that Winston Jordan used his duty-free concession and brought in a BMW. This is Godfrey Stacia. Until now, he is sat on audit reports done within his agencies. The big theft of fuel at marijuana, covered it up, sat on it. Massive theft because the person is linked to APNU. He's been covering up a ton of things in there. So we don't know how many people got tax waivers, but we gather it runs into tens of billions of dollars approved by the Commissioner's Department. Tens of billions of dollars. So he now is worried about the people's right to know. But all will come out. Then he had this to say about want of entries vehicle are disposed in a fair and transparent manner, GRA boss assures, and then will not tell us about who got them. So in relation to the disposal of vehicles being questioned by the Auditor General, since there are strict rules of confidentiality to which we must adhere, he can't release it. But we know who they are. We don't know all of them, and there's nothing transparent about their disposal. And let me tell you, if you sell state assets, this is not like taxpayers' tax obligation. If you sell state assets, you have a duty to publish how you sold them. Check our privatization document from 1992 to 2011. Every single transaction of the privatization unit, every single sale was documented, and how we sold it, through what process, and what price we got. Every single one in all those years, over 20 years, and a full report is there. He says, I can't tell you how I was selling these vehicles, but we know he sold over 200 of them. But let me give you a couple, so you will determine how transparent they are. They sold one to Yannick Jordan, and Jordan doesn't say anything about this. Yannick Jordan. Lot 94, Sugarcane Street, South Romville Garden. Happened to be the same address to the Minister of Finance, Winston Jordan. And they sold it for $250,000, the whole vehicle, including the taxes. It was PWW 9601, registration date May 21st, 2018. PWW 9602, registration date the same day as well, registered to a George Jordan. Two Jordans on the same date got the same vehicle, each for $250,000. This is how transparent he has been. And I can go down the long list, a long list. Jordan doesn't say anything about that. This guy, Jordan, tried to steal the $18 million because, and I'm saying steal because when asked by the media, he denied being a receipt of it. Didn't put it in the accounts until we had to file a court case. Why doesn't Jordan answer? Anytime he goes to any public meeting, people should ask him about, we want vehicles like that too for our family, $250,000 for a vehicle. GRA should give it through the fair and transparent method that Stacia talks about, that we want the same fair and transparent method to own a vehicle for $250,000. It's a big cover-up, huge cover-up there. And we know that, I remember I told you about the liquor seized, that I want to know how fair and transparent was the disposal process when he gave the PNC 4,993 bottles of liquor worth over $30 million. They seized it and handed it over to the PNC. Now, my friends have asked me, the ones who like to drink, to repeat what kind of liquor it is. So it's Hennessy 508, the 5 bottles. Absolute Vodka, 2,564 bottles. Johnny Walker Black, 1,572. Ciroc, 168 bottles. Smirnoff Vodka, 104 bottles. So there you have it. So those who've been calling on me to repeat this, that is what he seized, and he handed it over to the PNC, over $30 million. And this is the commissioner who talks about fair and transparent manner of disposing things. This is just the tip, narrow tip of the iceberg, narrow tip of the iceberg. Then he goes after the fact that Guyana Times says, in fact, the $134 billion of GRA waiver represents a large chunk of money collected by the Guyana Revenue Authority. That is tax waivers. So his thing is on his high horse. For the sake of brevity, I will not expound on all the statutory reasonings and parameters regarding the exemption regime. However, for the sake of the learned individuals who should understand how the regime operates, but who inexplicably demonstrate selective ignorance. So that's what he says about people. But his buddy friend and minister had this to say in the budget in 2015. He talked about $55 billion of tax exemptions, and he said that we were giving it to cronies, friends, and family. Now, the $55 billion in tax exemption has gone to $134 billion. $134 billion, more than double. And who is getting it now? Is it friends and families and cronies? Because I know the local private sector is not getting much of it, not getting help. So this is the contrast. That one thing they said in 2015 when they got in, high horse, 55 billion of tax exemptions, and the PPP was giving away the treasury. It's gone to $134 billion per year now in tax exemptions. And this Stacia has the audacity to lecture anybody about procedures and stuff like that. So they've become politicians now. Godfrey Stacia has become a politician. Every week he's responding to things because he's smarting from the fact is that 200 new taxes and fees were increased or instituted. The fact is, that's a fact. And we're going to reverse them so that we reduce the burden on the Guyanese populace. We're not going to give the big companies and fancy contracts, etc., and then put the burden on ordinary people to pay VAT on water and electricity and data on medicines and stuff like that. We're not going to shift the exemptions to big people and then put the burden on small people. This is what this government has done, dismantle a lot of the pro-poor measures we've had in place. They, a lot of stuff has been going on, so I'm going to just deal with the GNBA. And this is a major issue, We have prepared a file. We're sending it to every international organization. And we're briefing the international community about GNBA, this Gestapo arrangement at GNBA, APNU Gestapo headquarters. So GNBA has been writing, namely Freedom Radio and stations, primarily that we put our ads on and that they perceive as sympathetic to the PPP. They've been writing them so that they have to submit everything. So every one of my press conferences become X-rated. It offends the people in GNBA, their press conferences, because they don't like us to expose the APNU. They become X-rated, you know, you have to add. I see pornography every night broadcast by stations and all of that stuff, but they're offended because we call Granger low energy or charlatan or something like that. They're offended by that, seriously offended. And so if you look at the requirements here, all of these we have to now submit to the GNBA. But guess what? Who is dealing with this? So there is a Joel Edmond, who was a candidate for the APNU the last time. He's an executive member of the AFC. He heads the Special Investigative Committee. The sick. Well, it's really sick. And so he heads the Special Investigative Committee. An AFC man, partisan, an executive member. He's the husband of Geeta Chandan Edmond, who is a candidate now on this list for APNU. And then Sobers, you just check his Facebook page and you will know where he stands. He's been doing a little bit of cleaning up there, but you check that. And this is the group that wants to sanction these stations. This is an operation run out of Nagamutu's office and the Congress Place. And so we're going to be informing the international community, and we'll be protecting our rights. Because I think they want to either suspend stations or shut them down as we get closer to the elections. This is an attack, a major attack, a political attack on freedom of the media. And we will pursue it. So now that I mentioned Nagamutu, I heard he's gone to New York to take over the chair of the G77. So as I pointed out before, G77, this is not the first time we're chairing G77. In 1999, we chaired the G77 before. There's nothing unique. But what is problematic is that what we heard took place that had been so well ventilated in the media about the process leading up to acquiring this chairmanship. It seems as though the prize was the chairmanship. And they didn't mind trampling on national security interests just to get this prize, because the prize is associated with cronyism and a lot of spending, perks for people. And we have to spend millions of dollars to staff the chair, the secretariat of the chair, etc. So it's more cost to the Treasury. So they seem to have made a compromise with Venezuela, although they have denied it, that they will not raise anything to do with the border during the tenure of our chairmanship of the G77. Well, we can never accept that. From March, the PPP will ensure that the person who manages the chair, every single opportunity we have, we will raise our national security interests in the G77 to protect our territorial integrity and sovereignty. That's one thing we're not trading: our borders and territorial integrity and sovereignty. Never, never will make any side deal to undermine that. But this is a shameful act for Cummings and Nagamoto to go up there. And they said, Nagamoto, the article in Chronicle, I think somewhere, I have an article here where he will be dealing with climate change issues. Now, there are three major contributors to greenhouse gases. It's deforestation, the burning of fossil fuel for transportation, and burning of fossil fuel for production of power. Together they contribute over 85% of all greenhouse gas emissions. And then I realized that Nagamoto could be the fourth, because the hot air that this guy, because it's greenhouse, global warming comes about because of hot air. They call it hot air. But all his talking is a bunch of hot air. Nothing useless, man. And so that's the appropriate place for him. Although they should have a mitigation measure after he leaves there, because he's a contributor to the nonsense. Imagine this guy at this stage wasting our money to go there and talk about something. They have a green state strategy that they didn't developed by consultants. They don't believe in it. They parrot it as a slogan. That's what we're talking about. I saw our low energy president alone. Today he addressed the army. And the same old, if you read through the speech, God, not a single thing that you can touch that will improve the lives of Guyanese. And he did this all without saying to the soldiers, said, you're so important, etc., but saying to them they will get their 1-month tax-free bonus in addition to their salary increases like they got under the PPP, returned to them. In fact, Jordan says it's a bribe to the soldiers. Never said that to them about their welfare or their remuneration or anything again. So we have a ton of this. We have, as I saw, you have also some crazy. Let me just deal with this one about the contracts again. Any contract issued in this period, I make it clear again, particularly those signed after the end of the fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends on the 31st of December. That's the fiscal year. Accounts close. Contracts signed after that period, accounts money processed based on, in 2020, on 2019 budget, all illegal. Every public officer knows this. They don't need to be told this. They know that as part, all of those who deal with money, the accounting officers. If they are complicit, they're cutting checks and keeping the checks, if they're signing contracts in this year when there is no fiscal, the fiscal year has ended, and start disbursing on those contracts, they're going to be in trouble. I just want to avoid that because we want to work with all of these public officers. But please don't get involved in illegalities, because you're going to pay the consequences too, because you should know what's right and what's wrong. You're trained in that way. So I want to urge them not to think. I heard Patterson went to Abu Dhabi and got a loan. We didn't know how much loan. as yet. Did he say how much? He went to Abu Dhabi and got a loan, but he's been traveling to very strange places. We'll have to check there too, what he's been doing in these places recently. I hope stuff not going that direction. And by the way, the Integrity Commission. So 70% of the cabinet members, well, the MPs, so by extension they're in cabinet too, have not submitted their statements to the Integrity Commission. I saw there are 3, which is about 10% of our MPs, because three persons did not. I'm trying to verify who the 3 are to make sure that they're corrected. But the 70% just tells a story. These are the people who argue, campaign on a platform of integrity, and 70% of them did not submit or meet the statutory requirement, and you can go to jail for a year for not doing so. And they just refuse to submit their statements to the Integrity Commission. 70%. And Granger talks about decency and honest government, and he can't even ensure that this happens. So these are some of the stuff. I want to urge people to condemn the racism of the campaign. The racism, their attempt to stir up racism again. You see it every day in what they say on the ground. I want to urge all Guyanese, even people who don't support the PPP, I'm appealing to them. That's not the way forward. We can campaign on messages, because at the end of the day, we'd have to work together to move our country forward. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Questions to start off. I noticed that the officials selected to monitor the accurate measurements of our oil from the National Bureau of Standards, they're only receiving an allowance of $20,000 for monitoring such a highly valuable resource. Do you believe that this opens the floodgates to corruption or incentivizing corruption?
How much you said?
$20,000 allowance a month. That's one. And two, Guyana is a candidacy member of the EITI. And one of the requirements is the disclosure of tax information, as well as the disclosure of all contracts in the extractive industries. But because of confidentiality clauses, the government has been saying from time to time it's unable to do this. Yes. IMF, however, has recommended that with a presidential authorization, such an issue can be addressed. Is this something the PPP government would be willing to do in order to ensure we fully comply with the EITI standards? And thirdly, it's been over a year, well, almost a year since the damning allegations of corruption at SOCU, and not a single person has been charged. What would a PPP government do to break the back of corruption, not only in SOCU, but within the force itself?
Okay. So this is the kind of philosophy and of this government. It irks me. It irks me that we could borrow $20 million from the World Bank to bring in foreign consultants and pay them tons of money to advise on the oil and gas sector. Often we don't even read the reports that they're right. $20 million, $4 billion. And until now, 4.5 years later, we can't find a means of protecting our people. They can't get jobs. The foreign companies are not, I don't mean those that are even investing, but you have a deluge of companies here who are displacing our people from every possible avenue, not just in the oil and gas sector. And our government just sits down unconcerned unbothered. They have provided no protection for Guyanese in the opportunities that would arise out of the sector, like the local content policy or hiring practices, that there must be fair. Yesterday, I met with some individuals. They shared with me, even the TNHD, the maritime issues. They were sent off unceremoniously, saying that these are surveyors who could not, because they are not qualified enough. They've been doing this for 20 years, and another foreign company brought in. They had to go to court to win that case. Yesterday, I met with some individuals about this matter. So this is observed every single way. So 20,000 Guyana dollars more to just go offshore there, when their counterparts or everyone else is just making thousands of dollars, US dollars I'm talking about. We're going to pay our people $20,000 to monitor what's going on. Now, you can't monitor only physically. The oil, we have to use software. We have to use a method where all day long we can see how much oil is being pumped. If we do the software, you have a gauge there that reads how much oil is flowing through, and that information gets sent back in real time to a center to track it, and then still have a presence to see that nobody is tampering with the system. But you have to measure it through your use of technology offshore, real-time technology. This is something we've already been looking at, how we will measure the oil flow, because that's critical. How much they produce, and we have to get our fair share of that. So these guys have done absolutely nothing in this regard. It's so sick. And you know the guy who was getting $72,000 when he went offshore. He had to leave the job, $72,000 gross, for spending 28 days there and working 12-hour shift, and get $72,000 Guyana dollars. Now, this is all. So on Friday, they have a launch of First Oil. We haven't received any money as yet, but they have fireworks. They're spending money. Fireworks. They have big cocktail. You should see the invitation. I'll send you on glass and everything like that. This is what they're good at. This government, working with the oil company now to waste our money even before we've collected a cent from the flow of oil. They collected 18 million from the bonus, which is a problem too. Compare that with Suriname, what happened in Suriname. But this is it. I'm not attending that. It's a waste of our people's money. A waste of our money at this point in time. We haven't received a cent from the flow of oil. And look at the big extravagance, gala, big red black tie affair, and fancy invitations, fireworks, gifts, a ton of things. This is precisely what led places like Venezuela and places like Equatorial Guinea and all the others into trouble. We saw even Trinidad, the wasteful expenditure. We not going down this route. We're not attending that launch for First Oil. When we start making money, then we can have all the fireworks. Every day we could have a firework in all the region. In all the region. People can do their individual fireworks in their yard and stuff when all of us are getting, we have a job, etc. This is the kind of thing. EITI, definitely. We were, as part of our low carbon development strategy, there were two things that we said we're going to look at in the EU flag. That is to look at the forestry sector. That is a convention. It's called EU flag, FLEGT, and then EITI. So we made a commitment to do it. They put in place a secretariat, but apparently the information is not flowing. It requires tougher political action. So I see some of the people who's supposed to, these are big miners, like a Sean Hopkinson. He's now on their list, but he didn't submit anything here. But Harman lives in his house, so I'm sure he's influencing Harman. I don't want my information to get out there and stuff like that. That sort of thing. You have to have strong directions from the executive. Everyone has to comply or not. Now, there are stages. You can start off, for example, if we can't go, it's too burdensome to get all the small miners and everybody. Let's start with the big people first, and then we come down. So we say in the first few 2 or 3 years, we get the oil companies and the big companies that are listed on the exchange, like, you know, raise their money from stock exchanges, all the oil company, the gold mining companies, etc. And then you go after it in, you know, at lower levels. So because if you try right at the beginning, there are lots of ordinary miners too who can't put together this information. You know, they don't have all of their accounts and everything else. And many of them are just making a hustle too. So you can't make it too burdensome on your people, but enough to see that the big players are transparently managing their affairs. And you can track them. And that is something that we definitely look at. The damning allegations at Soku, yes. And they just dropped everything. I don't know. I'm just in the dark as you. These guys don't give no explanations. When they're caught with their fingers in the cookie jar, they just blame somebody else. So look at what has happened at Soku. And somehow the PPP would be blamed for that too. So we have to definitely look at these agencies. And if you staff them with political people and you give political directions, you know, a President Granger will never have to go through the trauma of what many of our leaders have to go through at a place like Soku. It never be, because we respect the office and stuff like that. You could have done things decently, you know, but so they had Sam go in, Ramatar, me, but no, it's just a harassment thing. They got directions to harass. We'll never give a direction to harass a former president like President Granger. We never give a direction to do that because we believe if you serve the country, etc. But they did this from a position of vindictiveness, not information, not facts. Go after these people. Here is the list. But we'll definitely put in place a body that will go after the real corruption. Not because it is partisan or because it's vulgar. But if you find we let the issue lead you to the individuals rather than, you know, saying go after that person immediately. That's not going to be. No attempt to be vindictive. We don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. We have a plan that starts from the 3rd of March to move the country forward, to get people working again, to get our things working in Guyana, to get them better health care and jobs and housing and all of that. We don't have time to waste too much.
Just for clarity, sir. On the question of the EITI, you said that it requires tougher political action. Just
yes, political will too. Yes, political will, and we will ensure. That is why we also said that we will criminalize non-disclosure from the oil companies by our officials, our own officials. Not so. Imagine a law which says your own Minister of Finance can go to jail for 10 years if he does not publish information about receipts from the oil company within 3 months in the official gazette.
Would this be across the board?
Yes, yes. Yes, but we start off with oil. You see, we have to go in stages because this is the big one. And so when you have limited admin capability too, sometimes you just start with the biggest and then you work down to the smaller ones. You can't go after small people first and leave the big guys running amok. We got to go there first. And that is why the PPP said we will implement campaign finance reform. Because now with oil companies coming here and the big, you know, they make so much revenue and they don't like a government's policies or something, you act tough on them, they can make huge contributions to people to create disruption. And so we have to monitor all of those things. That's why we said we'd pass campaign finance legislation.
And on the SOCO issue, just to clarify as well, the PPP's approach, should you win the elections, would be to create an independent agency to go after corruption in the police force and SOCO?
Wherever the corruption is. But this SOCO was created on the basis of to support the FIU under the authority of the commissioner, to give like political teeth to their investigations to support money laundering and like drug trafficking, etc. If you overload it with too many things, you need probably to expand it, not to diminish that authority, but to probably expand it and create a department of fraud. And then they have independent reporting relations. They can report to the office of the president, to no politician, etc. They report to the structures. But if you have, I've seen attempts now to cover up corruption at some senior levels within the police force. You have to have external investigation. You can't do it from within. If a person is too senior in the police force and you attempt, they intimidate people. And there are about 2 individuals I know now who have been caught with lots of corrupt things, practices, and the investigations are now moving because of that same fear from their subordinates. So this is vital for us.
Tiana Graham, Country News. 2 questions, Mr. Jagdeo. On the three parties thus far has challenged the AP and the coalition where the presidential debate, would it be something that your party would be open to?
We're not challenging APNU to a debate. We know what we're going to get from President Granger. We're going to get the same old platitudes. It's like an absolute waste of time. What is he going to say to us to overcome the 4.5 years of neglect of communities? Some other, we're busy working. What would he say to us about the $88 billion of new taxes he's put on people's back? What is he going to say about talking about children all the time and taking away $8 billion through the 5 years of the $10,000 grant from them? What is he going to talk about putting VAT on water and electricity? Or is he going to say, oh, I've solved crime by appointing 4 deputy commissioners now? And a good life. So the last thing we want to engage now is in empty rhetoric. And that's all he does. Green state, decade of development, etc. It's hard to argue against those things. How do you argue against nothing? It's very hard, to argue against that. So we are carrying our message to everybody, and we're making a commitment to implementing all of these things in a manner that brings all of our people, move all of our people forward. And even those who don't vote for us, they have a stake in that future. That's where we're working.
Has there been a strategy for the list of changes being made to the NRI?
Yeah, I think that request must have been made. I did it. I think at the commission level, there are requests, and you can ask about this too. Anything else? All right. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just giving my colleagues a chance. Finally, from me, despite all of the shenanigans that you've been seeing with the border approval process, do you still have confidence that we would end up with a free and fair elections? That's one. And two, the incumbent has been talking a lot about the corruption of the PPP, yet it has been unsuccessful in securing a conviction. What is a PPP government going to do different to ensure that you're successful with your investigations into this government's corruption? And is it likely that you would see polygraph tests included?
Yeah. So we have great faith in the international communities present in GCOM. We're working hard. We're working hard on to ensure that we have a presence in every polling place, a strong presence, to look out for any attempts to tamper with the elections. We've already been briefing. We've had some signals about those who are starting to talk the violent talk, about polling day and stuff like that. So we're getting a list of those individuals, and we're sharing it with some people in the international community have already expressed desire to get that information. We're doing that. And so within GCOM, as I said before, because of the presence of the observers and our vigilance, I think we will get a clean voters list. We'll know exactly when the OLE comes out in a few weeks' time, the official list of electors. Then we will test that list across the country again. We'll do a testing of the list. And what was this?
The last one was, what is the PPP government going to do to ensure it's
Oh, the corruption, yes.
And if polygraph tests-
Okay, the corruption, yes. So a lot of their thing was based on when they campaigned in 2014. It was on slogans. So you recall, as I've mentioned several times before, they put in their manifesto, PPP was stealing 28 to 35 billion a year. Not any specific thing, because Gulsaran said so. Nothing specific. It was all a campaign. So when they try to confront now the evidence of it, they can't find evidence of it because there is none. If a person steals $1 million, there should be a paper trail, much less $28 billion. And that's what they've been saying all along, we can't find evidence, etc. Because you made the issue into a political issue. Now, on the other hand, we have specifics. So I know about the 600 million missing at Durban Park because it's in the audit report. Somebody has to say where it is missing 600 went. I know that based on the Public Procurement Commission report, it says that the contract by the cabinet was awarded illegally. That is the 150-something million contract. And then we saw 300 million withdrawn from the asphalt account to cover that. So somebody has to answer, first of all, about the illegal contract. So Patterson has to say, how come he took this unsolicited bid to the cabinet? And what happened with the difference in the money? So there are lots of very, very significant things. Patterson, $9,000 in his account. He said he gave it back to Marad. But he never could produce the evidence that he gave it back to Marad, that the Chinese put in his account. There are lots of specific things. We know, notice I can talk about specifics and name individuals. By the way, we wrote and we received a response from the FIU to investigate the 5 million US that we believe Ramjatan has in his account or passed through his account in Capital One Bank in Valley Stream, New York. So we are hoping to get an early response to that.
The use of polygraph tests during the investigation.
Oh, yeah, but whatever the investigators' technique they use, but we don't even have to use polygraph. We have the paper trail, the forensic audit now. We don't need a forensic audit. You have the Public Procurement Commission. the Auditor General pointing this out. So we can only have to go after, take those. That's the first round. That's the first round. You can easily take all these reports and just send them to the police. And I'm sure you can secure some serious convictions on the basis only of those audited reports. Thank you.